In 1936, a simple storybook about a bull who would rather smell flowers than fight in the ring was published. Written by Munro Leaf with illustrations from Robert Lawson, I don't think either of them really knew just how much the story of Ferdinand would resonate. However, reading the book, it's immediately easy to understand its appeal, especially during a time when the world was on the brink of war. The book quickly establishes Ferdinand as a lovable, peaceful little bull, contrasted with the other bulls butting their horns. Lawson's illustration style has a distinct quality to it, with impressive use of shadows and nice little touches, the most famous being the image of Ferdinand sitting under the cork tree. Even though Leaf and Lawson never went to Spain, they took plenty of inspiration from the country in their visual representation. Most important of all is the theme of pacifism. Even as everyone cheers for Ferdinand to fight, he'd rather sit happily and smell the flowers. It's a good message about how even as society is overwhelmed by violence and a need to fight each other, maybe that isn't the solution, as well as the notion that we shouldn't be forced into specific boxes. The book generated a lot of discussion when it was published, as many interpreted it in different ways. It was published shortly after the start of the Spanish Civil War, and Francisco Franco banned it. Adolf Hitler also viewed it as propaganda, burning the book. However, there were many who saw Ferdinand as a sissy and even a communist. At the end of the day, Leaf just wanted to write a funny little children's book, although one never knows how the larger population will analyze a piece of media. Probably one of the most touching spreadings of Ferdinand's peaceful message was when 30,000 copies were given to children in Berlin following the fall of Nazi Germany. In 1938, Disney adapted the story quite faithfully in an animated short, reusing Leaf's words for the narration and even recreating Lawson's illustrations for a number of scenes, right down to the 5 men who find Ferdinand and take him to the ring. The result is a charming piece of animation with some excellent character animation and beautiful background work, making for a worthy companion piece to the book. The themes are transferred over nicely in the adaptation, as well as expanding on many of the comedic ideas utilized in Leaf's story. It probably isn't surprising the short resonated just as much as the book did, and it even won an Oscar, beating out 4 other Walt Disney cartoons in the process. This short eventually became a television staple for many years, especially in Sweden, where it's become an annual Christmas tradition. Meanwhile, in Brazil, a young aspiring artist also found himself enraptured by the short on television, and discovering the book many years later, saw potential in a feature-length adaptation. Last year, director Carlos Saldanha and Blue Sky Studios released their adaptation of Ferdinand, and did a great job of expanding the book while still honoring what Leaf and Lawson put on the page. While many elements were added to stretch out the length, Saldanha and his team included a lot of familiar imagery from the story. Of course, Ferdinand sitting under the cork tree is frequently shown, and the bridge portrayed in Lawson's illustrations is included. Even the bee which Ferdinand accidentally sits on and becomes the catalyst in the story leads to a major turning point in his journey. A number of minor characters from the book are developed, with the other bulls being given individual personalities, and we find out more about the matador's fame in Spain. We've seen many cases of short picture books being adapted into full-length features, and I think Ferdinand is an example of how to do it properly. What I also admired about Ferdinand was how it respected the themes Leaf wrote about, while also modernizing it with new concepts current audiences would be familiar with. The most obvious is the mistreatment of animals. The movie does not flinch in showing how bulls don't have much choice in going to the ring or ending up as a hamburger. There is an entire sequence set in a slaughterhouse, and the film goes out of its way to not romanticize bullfighting. It's actually a fairly harsh critique of the sport and its treatment of the bulls, although not surprisingly there was a bit of controversy in Spain over this matter. For any Spanish viewers who come across this video, I would be really curious to further know about the reactions the film got over there. I'm genuinely interested, so please leave a comment below. Another theme explored in this adaptation is the concept of toxic male masculinity and not conforming to what others feel you should act like. We see Ferdinand constantly pressured to act more tough and being insulted by other bulls, simply because fighting is not in his nature. For some reason, men are brought up to not feel emotion, and to resort to machismo tendencies, and I like how the film managed to bring that metaphor with its depictions of the bulls. The irony of Ferdinand being voiced by wrestler John Cena certainly does not escape me, and that was quite a bit of clever casting on the filmmaker's part. Cena brings a surprising amount of warmness to the role, and the movie nicely shows how Ferdinand's kindness towards others has an effect on the other animals on the farm. One of my favorite scenes that nicely depicts this is when he helps out the farm's resident Highland cow, and they just sit quietly, admiring the sunset. Finally, I think the direction deserves more credit than it's gotten. There are multiple scenes where Sardaigne uses the visuals to tell the story, and the use of framing is incredibly well done. The shot composition really highlights the moods of the characters, with the final confrontation between Ferdinand and the Matador being a standout. Truth be told, having now seen the 5 Best Animated Feature nominees from this year's Academy Awards, this was my favorite of the bunch. It was a touching film about the importance of being nice to one another, and isn't that the kind of movie we need more of nowadays? The release of Ferdinand is just the latest example of how Munro Leaf's wonderful little story about a pacifist bull is still relevant and needed, and it will continue to remain a classic book for many years to come. See you next time.